Welcome to Amot shel Halacha. Today's topic: Mitzvot Kiddush b'Yom Tov v'Yom Kippur. The mitzvah of sanctifying the day on Yom Tov and on Yom Kippur. We are in Siman 271 for Halacha 1. That's Siman Reish Ayin Aleph Halacha Aleph. This is review part 2. Rav David Yosef Shlita opens up. Kishem shemakadishim alakos belel Shabbat, just like a person does Kiddush on a cup of wine on Friday night, kach mikadshim alakos belele yomim tovim. So too a person has to do the Kiddush on a cup of wine on the nights of Yom Tov. Why? Mipnei she'av yomim tovim nikriim Shabbatot Hashem, because the Yom Tovs are also called Shabbat to Hashem. So therefore, just like you are obligated to go ahead and do Kiddush on a cup of wine on Friday night, you have to go ahead and you have to do Kiddush on a cup of wine when it's the night of Yom Tov. However, there is a machloket. This Kiddush that we're going to do on Yom Tov on a cup of wine, is it from the rabbis or is it from the Torah? Over there's a machloket. According to the rabbis that make Psak Halacha, Mitzvah Kiddush b'Yom Tov eina elam midrabanan. This Kiddush that we do on Yom Tov, some want to learn that it's only from the rabbis. Ulumatam, and against them, that kam merabotena poskim shakiddush b'Yom Tov hu mitzvah shaseh min haTorah kimo b'Shabbat. Other rabbis want to learn, no, the Kiddush that we do on Yom Tov is a positive commandment from the Torah, just like Shabbat. So you see over here, you have differing views. When it comes to doing Kiddush on Yom Tov night, some rabbis want to learn it's only rabbinical, other rabbis want to learn it's from the Torah, it's biblical. Now we want to speak about what about when it comes to doing Kiddush on Yom Kippur. Now you might think we're speaking about doing Kiddush on Yom Kippur on a cup of wine. No, chas v'shalom. We're going to see right now. Ledat kama mirabotena poskim, according to some rabbis that make Psak Halacha, kishachal Yom Kippurim b'Shabbat, when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbat, ava pi she'im shal lekadesh alakos machmat atanit, even though it's impossible for you to do Kiddush on a cup of wine because you're fasting, Mikol makom, nevertheless, chayavim lekadesh, you are obligated to go ahead and sanctify Kiddush Hayom, the sanctification of the day, b'tefillah. Rabotai, listen to this very carefully. Even though we cannot do Kiddush on a cup of wine because we're fasting, nevertheless, we have an obligation to do Kiddush in the Shemona Esrei. What does that mean? Dahainu kishomer b'tefillah hamida, when you're going to be in the Shemona Esrei, when you're going to get to the words kadesheni b'mitzvotecha, etc., and when you're going to conclude v'chotem mikadesh Shabbat v'Yisrael v'Yom Kippurim, over there you're going to go ahead and you're going to sanctify Yom Kippur. If we look right over here, Rabotai, this is the Shemona Esrei of Aravit of Yom Kippur. Elokeinu v'Elokei avotenu retzna b'mnuchatenu kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha. That's what Rav David Yosef Shlita is speaking about. Once you get to kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha, etc., 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 you're going to get to the bracha Baruch Ata Hashem Mochel Melech Mochel, etc. Then you're going to get right over here Mikadesh HaShabbat v'Yisrael v'Yom Kippurim, right over here. So basically, after you say Baruch Ata Hashem Melech Akol Haaretz Mikadesh HaShabbat v'Yisrael v'Yom Kippurim. So comes Rav David Yosef Shlita and he tells us that even though we cannot do Kiddush on a cup of wine, nevertheless we are obligated to sanctify the day of Yom Kippur, since it fell out on Shabbat, with the prayer in the Shemona Esrei, which is the Kadeshenu b'Mitzvotecha prayer. Since the halacha is clear that whenever you do mitzvot, you need to have intention, therefore, therefore you have to have kavanah on Yom Kippur when it falls out on Shabbat, while you are in the middle of Shemona Esrei, before you begin Kadeshenu, before you begin this prayer, Before you begin this whole prayer, you have to have this kavanah, you have to have this intention. שמכוון לקיים מצוות עשה של קידוש היום בדברים. You want to have kavanah that you want to fulfill the positive commandment of sanctifying the day with words. That's the Kiddush. You can sanctify Shabbat, you can sanctify Yom Tov, you can even sanctify Yom Kippur. On Shabbat you could do it with words, but the rabbi said even with a cup of wine. On Yom Tov we see that there's a machloket, is the Kiddush from the rabbis or from the Torah. But either way, Rabotai, we do it on a cup of wine. On Yom Kippur, I can't do the Kiddush on a cup of wine, so good. Use your words to sanctify the day of Yom Kippur. That's what he's telling us over here. Now, he says, V'yesh omrim, and there are those that say, Shemitzvat Kiddush b'yom HaKippurim ein rak b'yom HaKippurim shechal yud b'Shabbat. This whole concept that we speak about, that we have to go ahead and we have to sanctify the day of Yom Kippur with words, like that prayer I showed you, they hold that it's not only if Yom Kippur fell out on Shabbat, Ela rather, afilu kishachal b'chol. He says no. Even if Yom Kippur fell out on a weekday, it's not Shabbat. If it's Shabbat, I could understand why I have to do Kiddush in the Shemona Esrei. Because it's Shabbat, I have to do Kiddush, and I cannot do Kiddush, so I'm going to do it in the Shemona Esrei with my words. But on the weekday, what's the Kiddush? What am I doing Kiddush on? I have the obligation to do Kiddush. Nevertheless, there's some rabbis that want to learn that even when Yom Kippur falls out on a regular weekday, you are obligated to go ahead and sanctify the day of Yom Kippur with words in the Shemona Esrei. Shekeshem shemitzvah lekadesh b'shabbatot v'yomim tovim, just like there is a mitzvah to go ahead and sanctify the Shabbat and the Yomim tovim, kach mitzvah lekadesh b'yom HaKippurim. So too there's a mitzvah to go ahead and sanctify the day on Yom Kippur. So even though it didn't fall out on Shabbat, Yom Kippur says Shabbat, Shabbaton. So it doesn't have to necessarily be on Shabbat itself, it could be any other given day. Review, Rabotai, Kiddush and Yom Tov. Just like we make Kiddush on a cup of wine Friday night, we also make Kiddush on Yom Tov nights. Why? Because Yom Tov is also called Shabbos for Hashem. Some rabbis say Kiddush and Yom Tov is rabbinic. Others say Kiddush and Yom Tov is a Torah mitzvah, just like on Shabbat. Kiddush and Yom Kippur. Question, on Yom Kippur you can't drink wine, so how do we do Kiddush? Answer, according to many rabbis, when Yom Kippur falls on Shabbat, you still fulfill Kiddush in your prayers. For example, in Shemona Esrei you say, sanctify us with your commandments, and end with who sanctifies the Shabbos, Israel, and Yom Kippur, the blessing that we saw over here. Since mitzvot need intention, when you say that part of the prayer, you should think, I am doing the mitzvah of Kiddush with words. What about doing Kiddush every Yom Kippur? Some say Kiddush of Yom Kippur applies only when it falls on Shabbat. Others say, no. Every Yom Kippur, even weekday ones, has a mitzvah of Kiddush. Because just like Shabbat and Yom Tov need Kiddush, so to Yom Kippur needs Kiddush. Rabotai, have a great day. Baruch Adonai L'olam.